Hello and welcome to this .tros Maths key skill video on solving quadratic inequalities of the form ax squared plus bx plus c less than 0 or ax squared plus bx plus c is greater than 0 requiring rearrangement. Now I'm hoping that you've already seen my previous video on how we solve more basic quadratic inequalities. It's a quadratic inequality because we've got an inequality like a greater than symbol, and it's quadratic because when we expand this out we're going to get an x squared term. So let me write out the steps again from that previous video. Step 1 is to get 0 on one side of the inequality. And at the same time, we want to expand everything out. So basically, we want to either get it in this form here in the title or this form here. So summing x squared plus summing x plus something is either less than 0 or greater than 0. So let's do that. We need to expand out this bracket first. Now you can either write this bracket out twice and expand it, or you might know the quick way to do a bracket squared. You do the first thing squared, so 2x squared, well that's 2x times 2x is 4x squared, not 2x squared. Then you do the product of the two things doubled, so 2x times 1 is 2x, doubled is 4x, and then you do the second thing squared. So that's the quick way to expand out a bracket squared. We've got greater than 5x plus 4, and as I said, we want to get 0 on one side. So let's subtract these things to get it on the side where x squared is positive. We want the x squared term to be positive just to make it easier for us. So we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. So that's going to be minus x because 4x minus 5x is minus x. And we want to subtract that 4 as well. So 1 minus 4 is minus 3. And that's now 0 because we've subtracted everything. So we've done step 1, we've got 0 on one side, and we've got it in this form here, summing x squared plus something x plus something is greater than 0. Now step 2 is to factorize. So you imagine like you were just solving a quadratic equation. You were solving 4x squared minus x minus 3 is equal to 0. So we factorize. Now we could split the middle term or something like that, but I'm just going to do it the quick way of just guessing the two brackets. So I think it's going to be 4x and x, and I think it's going to be 3 and 1, and I think that's minus and plus, and I believe that works. And I know that was super quick, but if you've forgotten how to factorize a quadratic expression where you've got a number from the x squared, please do watch my video on that first. Then step 3, we saw in the previous video on quadratic inequalities, was to sketch, sorry I misspelt that, y is equal to the left-hand side. So we're going to sketch y is equal to 4x plus 3 times x minus 1. And do you remember to sketch this, you just make this equal to 0. If y was 0, so if y was 0 when you're on this x-axis, what would x be? Well, one of these two things has got to be 0 to make y 0. So if x minus 1 was 0, x would be 1. And if 4x plus 3 is equal to 0, remember the quick way of doing this? You just negate that and divide by the number in front of x. So it'd be minus 3 over 4, so minus 3/4. And then because it's a positive number in front of the x squared, it's 4x squared, it's going to be a positive quadratic, and it's going to be a smiley face shape like that. Remember, we don't need to write the y-intercept on here because it's not relevant for solving this inequality. And then step 4 was to read the values of x off the graph. Now, y is equal to this thing here. So we're saying that this thing here, if that's y, we're saying that y is greater than 0. So if we look at the graph, where is the y value greater than 0? Well, the y value is greater than 0 here because look, if you're above the x-axis, the y value is positive. So we've got this part of the graph, I like to bold up the line, and also the y value is positive here. So we then look at each of the parts of the bold line and say, what can we say about x for that part of the line? Well, here, if the x value is minus 3/4 here, then the x value is going to be below minus 3/4, just left of it. So we're going to say that x is less than minus 3/4, or, so I use the word or, we're in this region here. So we're on this part of the line, well, the x value is 1 here, so x will be greater than 1 right of it. So we do x is greater than 1. And that's the final solution. Remember that this inequality here has to be consistent with whatever you used here. So if this is greater than, this should be greater than and less than. If this was greater or equal to, that should be greater, equal to, less than equal to.